There are a lot of hard games on Roblox, but there's one game where beating a single level can take people days, weeks, or sometimes way longer. You might have actually heard of this game before, especially if you've ever been into Roblox obbies. But for everyone else, this is Eternal Towers of Hell, and it gets completely ridiculous. Eternal Towers of Hell, or ETOH, is basically a giant collection of obby towers. Most normal towers have 10 floors, and your goal sounds simple. Start at the bottom, make it to the top, and don't fall. Except there's one pretty important detail. For most towers, there are no checkpoints, so if you fall far enough, you're doing it again. At first, Etoh honestly doesn't look that intimidating. The easier towers use fairly normal jumps, moving platforms, and simple obstacles. You could probably join the game without knowing anything about advanced Roblox movement and still beat something. But Etoh has an entire difficulty system, and that's where things start getting slightly concerning. The difficulties start with easy, then medium, hard, difficult, challenging, and intense. The already pretty normal, then you reach remorseless. After that, the game basically stops pretending to be reasonable, insane, extreme, terrifying, and finally, catastrophic. Catastrophic is the hardest official difficulty in the game. And these aren't just normal obbies with slightly smaller platforms. At the higher difficulties, players are doing things like massive wraparounds, extremely precise jumps and movement techniques that most Roblox players probably don't even know exist. Some towers even expect you to use weird Roblox physics like wall hopping or other advanced techniques. And remember, you can spend ages climbing one of these towers, reach one of the final floors, miss one jump, and fall basically all the way back down. There isn't always some convenient checkpoint waiting for you, which sounds absolutely miserable, and yet somehow people willingly spend hundreds of hours getting better at this game. One of the most famous examples is Tower of Generation Failure. This is a catastrophic tower in Ring 8, and it has been around since 2020. It's basically one of those towers that represents the point where ETH stops looking like something a normal human is supposed to complete, and people actually beat it. Tower of Generation Failure is also pretty important to the game's history. Back in July 2020, it became the first catastrophic tower to ever be completed, although that original completion used several major skips. Since then, thousands of players have somehow managed to beat it legitimately, which really says more about ETOH players than anything else. But Generation Failure isn't even the worst of it anymore. There's Tower of Cruel Punishment. It's another catastrophic tower, this time in Ring 9. And as of 2026, it's considered the hardest cannon tower in the entire game. The name is honestly pretty accurate. Even below catastrophic, towers can get ridiculous. Tower of Externalizing Insanity is rated extreme, which is already one of the highest difficulties in ETOH. Then there's Tower of Fractured Memories at terrifying. At this point, the difference between these difficulties is basically just deciding how much pain you'd like today. But difficulty is only part of why ETOH is interesting. The game is absolutely massive. There are hundreds of towers spread across different rings, zones, and other areas, and instead of just choosing random levels from a menu, you slowly unlock more of the game by actually beating towers, so there's always something harder sitting just ahead of you. That's probably why people get so addicted to it. So I start by struggling on a medium tower, then eventually medium feels easy, so you try hard, then difficult, then challenging, and suddenly you're 3 months deep into learning Roblox movement techniques because a glowing tower portal told you that you weren't good enough. And this game has been around for years. The game originally came from Jukes Towers of Hell, which eventually became Eternal Towers of Hell. So there's now an enormous community built around beating towers, creating towers, and pushing Roblox obby difficulty further and further. It's basically its own little corner of Roblox. Which is why calling Eternal Towers of Hell just an obby game feels kinda wrong. Technically, yes, you're jumping on blocks. But underneath that is this massive progression system where the entire point is slowly improving until jumps that once looked completely impossible become normal. And then you find another tower that makes you feel terrible again. So if you've never heard of Eternal Towers of Hell before, that's probably for the best. But if normal Roblox obbies have started feeling too easy, this game has enough difficulty to keep you busy for a very, very long time. Just don't blame me when you fall from floor 9. Like and subscribe for a shout out next video. Comment down below what you thought of this. And I'll see you next video.